Where did Hanuman actually come from? This is tougher to answer than one would imagine in today's day and age. The standard answer would be that Lord Hanuman was the son of Anjana, the wife of Kesari. His birth was blessed by the wind god Vayu, and hence he was also called Vayuputra, the son of wind. Except this may not be accurate. While the Hanuman birth story is indeed a part of the original Valmiki Ramayana, there is hardly any mention or reference to either Kesari or Anjana. You see, Hanuman's characterization evolved within the Ramayana Universe through millennia, from the ancient Vedic era before Valmiki himself. This was from way back when the Ramayana most likely comprised a handful of folk ballads. It has been more than 2400 years since Valmiki consolidated those folk ballads and wrote his masterpiece, forever immortalizing our Hanuman. 2400 years. That's a lot of time. So the modern day Hanuman birth story involving Kesari and Anjana must have evolved as well. This may actually be one of the many interpolations or later additions to the myths in the Ramayana universe. So then you might ask, where did Hanuman actually come from? We could just refer to the original Valmiki version of the Ramayana, right? Yes, except there are problems here as well. The Valmiki Ramayana itself has multiple versions with multiple manuscripts. Centuries of literary analyses by a long list of Ramayana scholars from India and abroad led to an academic consensus widely accepted to this day. There are three versions of the Valmiki Ramayana available today: the northern recension, the southern recension, and the eastern or the northeastern recension. Of these, it is widely accepted that the southern recension is the least distorted and the version held to be the truest to the one composed by Valmiki. So, does the southern recension bear mention of the birth story of Hanuman with Kesari and Anjana being his parents? Yes, but hardly. Outside of the birth story of Hanuman, references to Kesari come up in the Hanuman Sita Samvada of the 5th book, Sundarakand, wherein Hanuman mentions that he is the son of the wife of Kesari. But this section of the Ramayana has been proven to be an interpolation. Outside of this spurious section, and the Hanuman birth story already called out in the original Valmiki Ramayana, there is no mention of Kesari. This is especially strange because throughout the Ramayana there are multiple occasions where a list of significant Vanas have been called out, especially in the 4th book, that is Kishkinda Kanda, and the 5th book, that is Sundarakanda. For Kesari to not find any mention in the Kishkinda Kanda is very strange. Kesari does find mention 3 times in the 6th book, known as the Yuddha Kanda. However, the Yuddha Kanda is widely considered by scholars to have been the most interpolated of all the genuine books of the Ramayana. Also, out of the 3 times Kesari is mentioned, only one instance is of any significance where he is simply described to have fought valiantly. Incidentally, the Yuddha Kanda also calls out extensive lists of significant Vanars in various sections. None of these though include a Vanar named Kesari. Also, the Ramopakhyana section of the Mahabharata, which has been proven to have been based on the Valmiki Ramayana itself, bears no mention of Kesari either. The same goes for Anjana as well. Outside of the Hanuman birth story, she only finds mention once in a sarga of the Yuddha Kanda, describing Hanuman's journey to the Himalayas. The famous German Indologist Dr. Hermann Jacobi has long proved that this was an interpolation as well, and not authentic to the Valmiki Ramayana. This is a major reason for concluding that the Hanuman birth story with Kesari and Anjana as his parents is not a part of the original Rama story. The other major reason is the simple fact that the ancient bards of Ramayana knew of Hanuman simply as Vayuputra and not the son of Kesari and Anjana. Just think of all the alternate names or epithets reserved for the great Hanuman in the Valmiki Ramayana over and above that of Vayuputra. None of these names bear any reference to an Anjana or a Kesari. They all refer to Hanuman being the son of wind and nothing more. The name Anjana Sutta does appear in the southern recension, but that has been proven to have been an interpolation as well and not authentic to the Valmiki Ramayana. There is no mention of any of Hanuman's epithets so common in use today like Anjaniputra or Kesarinandana. Isn't that strange? Well, not really when you understand the chronology behind the evolution of Hanuman's epithets. For example, the name Anjaneya first appears in the Mahanataka from the 11th century, which is a medieval rendition of the Ramayana composed more than 1400 years after the Valmiki version. All this leaves us with the question then, where did Hanuman really come from? To answer this, we might need to take a step back and assess the entirety of the Ramayana cycle from the point of view of two forms of artistic criticisms. One, an ancient one rooted in the Navarasa theory of the Natya Shastra, and the other, a literary one rooted ironically in postmodernism. Much of the Ramayana mythopoeia is full of the fantastical, the preternatural, and even the divine. This is true for all the great Indian epics, sagas, and poetries alike. However, just like the modern genre of magic realism, every element in the Ramayana universe is rooted in some reality. Critics and historians alike have alluded to the monkeys, the bears, and the birds in the Ramayana to have always been totemistic symbols of aboriginal races from central India. This is not far-fetched when the Gotaras or the clans of tribes like the Oraons from Chota Nagpur in central India bear names like Tigga and Haleman, while the Mundas have a Gotra named Gari. All of them mean some species of monkey. In fact, the name Hanuman itself might be a Sanskritized form of a Dravidian word, Anmandi, which can mean male monkey, even though the syntax within the rules of ancient Tamil don't quite fit as well here. Nevertheless, Hanuman could just as well have been a member of a central Indian aboriginal tribe. Through the literary device allowed by the Adbhuta Rasa of the Navarasa theory, tales of Hanuman the human's exploits could have eventually been riddled with wild hyperbole over time. Hence, during his childhood, Hanuman is able to jump up to the sun, mistaking Surya to have been a large red fruit. This is also why Hanuman can literally move mountains as well in the Ramayana universe. Add to all this the postmodern literary flair for pastiche and parody, a sense of reflexive self-awareness not unlike that found in postmodern metafiction, and you have yourself a god molded out of Hanuman in a Ramayana universe, wherein every character knows that they're playing characters out of yet another Ramayana version, and thus they act accordingly. Yet, all this doesn't explain the source of the original epithet for Hanuman, Vayuputra. Interestingly, the use of the name Vayuputra might actually predate the name Hanuman itself. According to another prominent European Indologist, Dr. Heinrich Luders, at the time of the composition of the Ramayana, the term Vayuputra might have been used to connote the sense of the monkey god being a Vidyadhara or a conjurer or simply a magician. In the Buddhist Samugga Jataka, for instance, there is a story of a Vidyadhara who can conjure things out of thin air. Without suggesting him to have been Hanuman, he is simply called Vayusaputa or Vayuputra when translated to Sanskrit. In the Buddhist cosmogony, Vayu Dhatu or the wind element is at the core of change or transmutation. Ascribing this quality of being a Vidyadhara as the most important aspect of Hanuman's characterization allows the monkey god to change shape at will and travel great distances in a single bound. It is also the source of his gift of intelligence, shrewdness, articulation, and speech. This is the original etymology of the name Vayuputra bestowed upon Hanuman. The more literal son of the wind god narrative was most likely a major part of what would eventually become a series of endless addendums to Hanuman's origin myths, and even his characterization. But this could have happened only centuries later. Eventually, in one Ramayana version or the other, he would also come to become the son of Kesari and Anjana, when most likely this wasn't the case in Valmiki's original Ramayana. Although, for one who's a devotee of the god, Lord Hanuman, or for one who's simply an ardent admirer of the mythical character, it shouldn't really matter what the truth is behind his origins, or where is it that he really comes from. What matters ultimately is where he takes us. Jai Hanuman. Peace.